Hey everyone, and welcome again to another one of our podcasts, our online podcasts. We welcome you to a very, I think, the beginning of winter, here in South Africa. It's like the winds of winter, a very quick reference to the Song of Ice and Fire there, for those who actually read the book or follow, the series. Um, So today we have, once again, our awesome regulars, Mr. Dean and Mr. Gooch. How are both of you?
How's it?
Hello.
How has your weeks been?
Busy, work busy.
I mean, it's only
Well, I
Monday.
mean, since we last talked, I think
It's
that was
been
about
busy
2 weeks ago
too.
or something.
Mm. Mostly just busy doing live things. Yeah.
It's been busy, but good, yeah.
Okay.
Mm,
Um,
same.
I guess today's topic is about pain and loss. It's an area that people do kind of struggle, and it also is a, well, for lack of a better word, pain point or pain area. Um, I guess people tend to like stay in this area or dwell in this area too long. So I guess today's one is just to discuss on how to pull yourself out of this or how to deal with it. We're going to use examples from ourselves really, and hopefully provide some value to you in this. So quickly, in the context of your own lives, what do you define as pain and loss?
I'll go after good.
Okay.
I need to think about
So
this.
Nice to throw him under the bus
Yeah, there's a
there.
hospital pass there. You okay, good?
I'm alright, guys. I'm alright. um. So as
Walk it
usual,
off.
ankle tap. Um. So yeah. So
Yeah.
pain and loss for me is it's. I mean, for everyone, it's a difficult topic, right? I mean, everybody at some point suffers pain. It can be in so many different avenues. You can have physical pain. You can, but most of the time, I think when we discuss like pain and loss, it's under the banner of like um not like physical pain, like you got injured or something, but more like emotional pain where you've suffered something that's impacted
Yeah.
you. Um, and the pain, I feel like the pain actually comes from the loss in most ways, right? Like you've lost something, you've broken up with your girlfriend, or someone in your life has passed away, or someone in your life has left you, or you know, you've lost a friend, or you've lost a loved one, and that brings about the pain for me, right? Because I mean, you don't just get pain out of nowhere. It's a result of some effect, right, or some thing that's occurred, and for me, most of the time, I mean, it's an emotional thing. You can have pain like you broke your arm or right, but and it can also come from, say, for example, you get like war veterans and stuff that like lose a leg during battle. I mean, that also is another level of pain and loss because now you've lost something that you're so used to your whole life, right? I've lost a leg or I've lost an arm or and that can really impact you in different ways. Some people are very strong and they just pick up and keep going, and some people like it just gets worse and worse, and then some people have like reactions to pain meds, and then they get addicted to things, and it's coping mechanisms. Um, and that for me is how I see like different areas of pain and loss. I think it's can come in so many different forms, really. But yeah, it's really an impact to a person where their life and current trajectory has been altered by something that's occurred, and they have to now face it, but also deal with it on like a daily basis, and or every time it comes up. And that is something that I think most people suffer, and I'm sure most people have suffered with that in their lives as well.
Yeah, true. I think for me, it's the when we talk about pain and loss, it's so closely linked to the concept of grief, and how to grieve, and like when you even begin grieving. Um, and everybody grieves differently. Some people grieve very openly. Some people completely shut down. But in terms of that pain and loss, as Guj mentioned, it's the event that makes you feel that pain and the loss, but it's the pain and loss kind of just continues for a while because you have to accept that the future you were planning for is inextricably changed because either the person or whatever you've lost has
Mm.
been gone and is now taken away. It's gone. So there's the grief associated to the future that you've also lost. So you lose a person, but you also
Yeah,
lose a potential future, which can that I feel like is one of the hardest things that people have to deal with because they have to come to terms with the future you were hoping
yeah.
for will never exist.
That's very true. Um, and for what do you think is there a purpose to pain?
Well,
Like the emotional pain and like grief and trauma.
Yeah. Is there like a overlying I think purpose? So let's just say you encounter a particular loss and you're experiencing this grief or whatever, and is there a purpose for that? What do you think that
yeah, I would
is there
say
a higher
there's
purpose
a
for it?
purpose for it. I don't know about a higher purpose, but there's a purpose for pain. Just like your body feels pain when you touch a hot stove, a hot cup or thing. It's a way of your body telling you something's not right, right? Or you haven't dealt with something. So in the case where you've touched a hot cup, it's something where your body's telling you, listen, if you keep doing this, it's gonna hurt more, you know. But with pain from like
Mm.
a loss or like as Dean says, grief, right? It's telling you that you haven't dealt with whatever you're facing appropriately enough for you to move on. Um, if I can put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree to a
Yeah.
point with that.
Mm-hmm.
I think from an evolutionary standpoint, the reason you feel emotional pain and grief is so that it forces you to bond, in your social circles. That then ensures survival, right? Um, it was in a movie of some kind where I think it was one of the Fast and Furious movies, that where Charlize Theron talks about pain and loss. Like when a child would get snatched by a crocodile, the family would feel that pain and loss. It was designed so that we would look after ourselves better and we would ensure survival that way. I don't know how true that
Mm.
is. It could just, I mean, who knows how reliable Fast and Furious psychology actually is. But,
What do you
it
mean? It's
makes
very
sense.
reliable. What are you talking
I'm
about?
just surprised someone used a Fast and Furious movie to
There's
Hey,
to
hey,
make a
surprising
what do you
serious
mean?
nuggets
reference
of
from, right?
What do you
usefulness
mean?
in those
There's
movies.
so much there. Yeah, there's like for family. Come on, guys.
Yeah, family. Come on, like the whole thing is about family.
Yeah, what are you
It's like
talking
what
about?
movie is synonymous with family? It's Fast and
Yeah,
Furious.
yeah.
But I mean, okay, so that makes sense. I mean, I haven't checked the psychology there. If there's a psychologist listening, please don't hunt me down and kill me for that because you can correct us in the comments. Um,
I don't see a
but
psychologist hunting you down or trying to kill you.
you never know, dude. I mean, there's a psychologist or a psycho, either way. But in terms of the evolutionary side, that makes sense. But in terms of the purpose that it serves, I think that's down to where we are as people. Like, do you want to give that kind of pain and loss meaning? And does the meaning then help you move forward with life? If so, then it's
Mm,
very useful to give yourself some time to think about what this pain and loss serves you with. For some people, it's completely meaningless, and it's a wound that never completely heals. But
Yeah.
a lot of people they find the healing process involves finding meaning in the loss.
mm,
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I mean, if you take death for example, right? A lot of people there's two groups of people that you'll meet when they describe what is the purpose of death, for example. One is like you're saying, there's no meaning to death. It's just meaningless. But then the second group will kind of say, as both of you have said as well, it's about um, having that appreciation for the relationships that you currently have and the time that you
mm,
have in those relationships. So those are the two groups of people that you meet when I guess when you're kind of discussing death and what are the meanings of life, um, or the meaning of the pain or meaning of something that comes in your path, for example.
yeah,
There are
you
many.
know, you can actually use pain the same way. Pain,
Yeah.
it can act as a reminder, right? Because I was watching a movie yesterday, I think it was Face Off,
Mm.
and the guy was, John Travolta was like, after we do the operation and stuff, can you put the scar back because it acts as a reminder? So you can
Yeah.
actually use it as like a positive tool as well. I'm not
Yes.
saying,
Yeah.
yeah, look, I don't know if it's a completely positive tool because you're always reminding yourself of something bad that happened,
Mm.
but you can use it to like, it's a protection mechanism.
Yeah, makes
Agreed.
sense.
Face Off, Nicolas Cage, John
Take
Travolta.
that, viewers, you got
Yeah.
or listeners, you got two movie references in one podcast.
Imagine
Mm.
that.
I don't even watch movies on TV. It just happened to be on TV yesterday while I was doing something else.
Yeah. So there are many sources of traumas. I think in Gujin, his first comment mentioned that can be a source of pain, for example, and perhaps losing a stuffed animal can't really equate to losing a loved one. But what are the sources that you have experienced in your life, and what did you go through, and how did you work yourself out of that or through it?
The bus is now coming for Dean.
Well, I can say there's. I mean, for me, there's like a trifecta, right? It's friends, family,
Mm.
and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I've unfortunately been in a position to have lost friends, family, and the breakups. Like, not a partner passed on. Thankfully, they're still alive and kicking. It's more just there was a loss because the relationship ended, um,
Mm.
and there's a grieving process for all of those. Um, and I think they hit very differently because when a person passes on, no longer on the physical plane, you know that there is no reality where you will ever see them again, and that is a very difficult thing to come to terms with. Is be it a friend or a family member, to know that this person was present in your life, this person spent a lot of time with you, you made memories, but the last memory you
You just
have
never see
is the
them
last
again.
memory
Yeah.
you're ever going to make with them. Um, and that's a very difficult thing. It's like to know that there will never be another memory made with that person. That's one of the hardest things you'll ever have to deal with, at least for me
Mm-hmm.
personally. With regards to grief and loss of a relationship, that's very heavy in the beginning, and it's you just sink into it for a bit. But you know, whether it ended on good terms or bad terms, that person is still around. They're still there. There's potential for reconciliation later on. Um, but after some time, you realize it's probably best for both of you, and you're happier for it. But with the loss of a person, I don't think you're ever really happier for it. You learn to accept it, you learn to cope with it, but I think that's the distinguishing factor. There is in one case you're happy that things parted ways. In another case you're just learning to accept it a bit more, and every time you're reminded of their absence, it hurts a little bit less.
With I think when you look at death, for example, it's probably one of the hardest experiences that we will ever go through. But one of the things that I guess I've done in the past is, yes, we will not be able to create new memories like you're saying, Dean, but we do have an abundance of past memories, and with with that sort of loss, if I ever feel like I need to just have a moment just with that person again, the steps that I kind of take is just close my eyes, hand to heart, and absolutely remember one of the happiest experiences that I've ever had with that individual, and then everything comes back to you. You're fully immersed again in that sort of thing. I mean, I just wanted to bring that up quickly because a lot of people will have this sort of loss as one of their hardest things to do, and for me, it's just a recollection of happy times, and then you immerse yourself in that. I know it doesn't suffice to have just a memory instead of a physical presence, but um, at least you'll be able to feel some sort of love and comfort when you think about it.
Yeah, I think you're gonna have to like people are gonna have to be careful with that because um, that feeling of love and comfort can take you back into a space of grief as well.
Mm.
Um, I heard a quote, I think it was on TikTok a couple of weeks back, where someone said, I have to remember you for longer than I've known you. And man, that hit like a freight train. Wow. I mean, it was one of the hardest hitting things I've ever heard. Because, like, if you lose someone at a young age and you then go on to live a long life,
Yeah.
that's what it is for you. You have to remember them for longer than you've known them. And if that person has been important and been pivotal to you, then it makes it all the harder. And remembering them and trying to take comfort in the memories you have can be a very difficult thing to experience it from a place of comfort rather than a place of grief. How would you help people how would you help people navigate that?
Okay, so remember, you at that point you're dwelling still on the loss or not being able to um, have this person there with you. Like
Mm-hmm.
for when I immerse myself in memories of a person and the past, it's more coming from a point of appreciation that I actually got to spend whatever little time that I had with them.
I like
Um,
that. Like, take it
it's
from a
never
place of
it's never
appreciation. I think that's
yeah
the ticket.
it's not that I'm okay. I remember them now because I was feeling sad. So let me immerse myself in that whole sad situation now. No, no, no. It's more of okay. I remember this awesome time, and let me appreciate that I got to do this with them. So that is how I like it. Is it never starts from a place of sadness. It never starts from a place of okay. I lost anything.
Yeah, yeah. I
So
mean, I didn't mean
that's it for
like
me.
if I don't want people to start from a place of sadness, but what if someone started from a place of wanting to feel and be a little bit of appreciative, and they reminisced a little bit, and then they went from that reminisce, and then it like the thought of I'll never see this person ever again catches them off guard, which it can.
Which can, yes. I mean,
How do you then protect it? And I think what you said about always ground yourself in starting from a place of from appreciation, I think
mhm,
that's probably the way to go about it.
yeah. I guess that.
sometimes I feel like we also protect ourselves too much. Um,
Mm,
Sometimes it's nice. It's not nice, but I mean, it's good to feel those things because if you, it's also like a thing of if you felt it before, right? If you felt that pain and loss, and then you remember that person, and then it catches you off guard, I feel like you haven't fully experienced it. Because if you fully experienced it, it doesn't really catch you off guard. You'll remember the fact that you felt this way before.
mm,
And I do think it's important. Like it depends on the type of person you are for me. Yeah, some people like to remember and then dwell, and then some people like to remember and then move on, right? And
yeah,
it's the type of person that they are. Some people like, they'll have a picture, they'll look at the person, then they'll remember the things, then they'll talk about the things that that person used to do. And
yeah,
then there's some people like I'm a bit like that, the second person where I'll look at the picture, I'll remember the person, but then I won't go like, you know, too much down the road of this is what we used to be like. And I mean, like, I'll remember the fun things, but then like I know that I move on because I try to, as much as possible, like Yash does, is you feel everything fully. You in not envelop yourself, but you understand the emotion, you feel it, and then you make it part of your life, and then you take it forward with you, but you don't dwell so much. um, yeah.
okay.
That's the way I see it. But it's different for every person. Some
I
people
agree.
like some people like to remember all the things and
Mm.
then like to feel sad about missing somebody, for example.
Because I mean, remember at the beginning, I guess I said people kind of dwell on it.
Yeah.
They revel in the pain, for example. But that's what we're trying to, I guess, help people navigate out of. You know, you can, like what you're saying, you get to experience everything, um, but you need to find a way to move forward from
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Like when you experience something, you should experience it, but then you must learn how to move forward from that. You can't be you can't be the same level of sad about something all the time because then you're not growing from it, yeah?
Mm, that's very true. So, what are the stages? So, in this loss and pain, what are the stages that you've experienced? Like I
Well,
know there's stages of grief, right? And I guess it could be similar here. What are the stages of emotions that you've experienced?
um for me, it's always first it's a bit of shock, because you're like, I can't believe that happened,
Mm.
you know? And then it's like, okay, how do I deal with this? Like, first I have to like break it down, see how I feel about it. Because in some cases it's easy to deal with it, depending on what it is. But in some cases it can be very hard. Like if you lose someone, right? Like you lose a friend. What, like, how do you deal with it? It's a very difficult thing to say, okay, I can deal with this. First, the first thing that goes through your mind is like, what do I do now? You know?
Hmm.
So you sort of get stuck a little bit. Then you have to like deal with what happened, right? How it happened. Um, then you have to like be okay with that. Then you have to like understand it. Then it's okay to talk about it, because when you talk about it, even to other people, it allows you to be a bit more comfortable with what happened. And then, it's there's sort of the first thing is always denial, right? I
Yeah.
don't know. There's like the seven stages of how many stages of grief are there?
Yeah,
Five.
I
Okay.
don't know.
I believe five. Um, Denial, anger, bargaining,
Okay,
depression, and
so
acceptance.
right, so you kind of go through all of those, and like you have to go through all of those, because if you sort
Mhm.
of skip one, it's like you're not dealing with something. And I've experienced it, and there's always the denial, there's the anger, there's the bargaining, there's the
Yeah.
frustration. I think you said frustration, right? And then accept
No, it's denial, anger, bargaining,
depression, right?
depression,
Yeah,
and
that depression
acceptance.
stage is probably, I think, for a lot of people the most difficult one. Some people, anger is a big one.
There is actually a
Oh,
seven-stage one as well. There is shock, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, testing, which is seeking realistic solutions, and then
yeah, I think I'm
acceptance.
the second person, because I always do get a bit shocked first. Like the first thing that happens, even if the shock is for a short period, it's like, yo, this happened. Like I can't believe it.
Mm.
Like I can use an example. Uh, obviously I won't give names and stuff, but a mate of mine recently who stays overseas passed away, right? And he moved overseas. Like we weren't the closest of people. Like we used to work together, right? So we were colleagues. But I mean, like we've done trips and we've been like on work outings together, and we used to work together and stuff like that. So we did quite a bit of stuff, and it was like over a couple of years. So you kind of get to know somebody quite well. And then
Yeah,
he moved overseas, and then within a couple of years of moving overseas, you could see that he was having a great life. I mean, social media, the guy's having a good time and stuff. And then he passed away from a motor vehicle accident. And there's even around the office after he'd left over so many years. I mean, the guy was a really nice guy. And there was just the first thing that happened was just utter shock, because it's like you don't expect it, right? Um, you expect the guy to come down once every Christmas, you visit everybody, you say hi, and you know, but like that happening is it. There's the first thing that happens is shock, and then you have to deal with that. This can happen anywhere; it can happen to anybody, and then your decision making sort of changes for a week, you know, and then you have to like deal with it. Like
yeah,
automatically, your decision making like changes path, because you sort of forget that like life is precious, you know. Um, so yeah, and I'm sure with COVID, that's happened quite a
Mm.
lot for a lot of people.
Definitely.
Yeah,
oh yeah, dude. I also feel like I'm one of those people that experiences the shock first. I mean, it feels like you just got
yeah,
punched in the gut and all the air in your lungs has
yeah, for
left
sure.
your body. Like you can't even breathe when you get that news. It just
Yeah,
hits you so damn hard. It's like you you're functional, but it's like why am I not able to take air in? And then you have to try and then you got to process the news, and then you have to process the loss, and in between all of that, pain is ever present.
So would you say then that those 5 steps or 7 steps, did you go through all of them? And are they applicable? So I know we've touched on death because death is probably one of the most prominent ones. But are they applicable in other situations as well? Have those happened? For example, like Dean, you mentioned breakups and losing friends. Good, you mentioned that. Are they applicable in those multiple scenarios?
yeah, I would say so.
I feel like
Yeah,
it's a template, yeah. I mean, they're not hyper specific. They're
Mm-hmm.
categories of emotions, and I think they are transferable. Um, I think like if you want a different example, like imagine you are like a professional soccer player and you get a really really bad injury and you can never play again. There you haven't lost a person, you haven't broken up with anybody, but you've lost your future as a
Yeah, yeah.
professional
Mm,
athlete.
mm,
So you got to now go through that process. And there are players that have come out and spoken about it, and they talk about that initial shock of and the trauma of getting an injury, the denial when they were told you may never play again. Then they went through anger. They all talk about a bargaining thing, like they talked to so many doctors and said, "Look, I don't mind. Just try a surgery. Just do this. Just do that. It'll be fine. We'll figure it out." Um, After they all get that told, what, it's not possible. They all went through that really depressed phase where they just lost the will to do anything. They just didn't want to get out of bed anymore. And then they went through that kind of like well, what now? Um, you know, like seeking help. I think they call it testing, but I think it's like you're looking for some sort of guidance, and then they get to a place of acceptance, and then they start something else. Um, but I think it is very transferable. I think some people will spend more time in certain stages than others, but I think the actual stages of them are quite transferable.
I
Okay.
agree.
I mean, so you know, in all of the past, I guess structures or examples that we've given, and ways forward that we've given, we always kind of identify patterns in this whole thing. And with this, I guess 5 step or 7 steps, there's that pattern that's there, right? Recognizable. There's a
Yeah,
similarity in terms of emotions, feelings, and perhaps even physiology in there. Um, and with
yeah,
that sort of template, you'll be able to recognize that you're in a particular, you're in a particular state, or one of these states really, um, and you can kind of help yourself navigate out of it. I think we always say that identification is the first step, and then taking action and doing something about it, right? So it's good that you guys brought up that 7 step or 5 step method and things that you'll have experienced in your lives, which is very similar to how others would feel as well. Um,
Yeah, I do think that even if you have a calm head normally, being in those scenarios is very difficult to even identify which stage you're at.
mm,
It does need quite a bit of help. I mean, even the calmest person or the most level-headed person can be thrown off balance by something like pain and loss, because it can be so debilitating.
it's
Um,
it hits
and
it hits you
yeah,
in a
it's
different
also
place
something that
altogether.
that's like
So
you can't really practice.
yeah,
So
exactly.
you can't really practice at being good at, and you not that you
Yeah.
want to be good at, like pain and loss and losing people and things like that.
Mm,
You don't really want to be good at
mm,
that, but like from a perspective of improving oneself, it's you can't really practice in that area. It happens so suddenly,
yeah.
like both of you have mentioned, and onset is so quick. You don't have that much time to
Mm,
process it in abundance, really, without
mm.
everything having affecting you.
yeah, you get
Yeah,
like emotional whiplash, man.
exactly. And then sometimes it's hard to I get think when there's trauma and pain involved, right?
Yeah,
Um, and
it's challenging.
yeah, no, definitely, and you should 100, as Guj mentioned earlier as well, you should 100% feel those emotions and kind of get to a safe space. But there's also recognizable patterns for you, like we've just mentioned as well. And I'm sure in your life, if you look, you can find them and kind of just navigate your way to that safe space.
Mm.
So what coping mechanisms have any of you used, if any, actually? Any of them destructive? Alcohol, drugs, cutting yourself, risque behavior? I know a lot of people who've done them, um,
I mean,
and
we use isn't South Africa like one of the uh, highest in the world in terms of like alcohol consumption and stuff?
Yeah, but that's
But
a social level. We
I
really
mean,
just like
sure,
drinking.
but I mean, I would say the bulk of it's not necessarily social. Um,
No, I can't talk to the research behind this actually
is
because we did
is
consumer
most of it
research on
social?
it. We are deeply
Okay.
social drinkers. Yeah, yeah. I don't know what the research is behind when we drink out of place of grief, but from the studies that I've looked at that compares to the rest of the world, it's based on a social
Okay,
consumption pattern.
that's good to know.
But
Um,
also
Yeah, we're a jolly bunch. We're a very jolly
ah,
bunch, especially with booze.
we're also a very sarcastic bunch.
sarcastable.
That's true.
But yeah, yes,
Very
I
true.
think there's a lot of coping mechanisms, and most of them aren't always the greatest.
Mm.
I would say like 75% of them all involve some form of further torture, you know?
Hmm.
Um,
You're
yeah,
substituting
it's
pain. Is that what
essentially
you're
a
saying?
substitution. Oh, well, not a substitution, but also a way of coping, right? So you're not substituting, you're trying to deal with it, but without actually dealing with it. Yeah?
I feel like it's more of
Yeah,
an
yeah, yeah.
escape.
Yeah.
Like you don't want to deal with it.
Yeah,
That's why
so
you go
you're
get
not
hammered.
actually dealing with it, right? But you're trying to cope, right? So you say, for example, alcohol, right,
Mm.
or taking drugs or whatever. You like you say, it's an escape, but you're not dealing with the actual issue because I mean, 3 days later, when you remember it, when you're not drunk or high or whatever, then it's you're gonna like go and look for more of the coping mechanism instead of actually dealing with the thing in front of you.
Yeah, I think what I meant by substitute is I feel like people know full well that alcohol is bad for you,
Mm,
and so are drugs. And there's obviously the escapism, so you can get a distraction. But I do feel like you're trading um, emotional pain for your
yeah,
health and
yeah.
physical pain later on.
So there was an interesting comment by, I can't remember which person it was. I'm not sure just yet. But they said that like drugs in any form really. I'm gonna put weed in there as well. You know, all
Yeah.
of those. It's a state altering. So you know, when you're in any particular pain state, you want to feel something else. And so one of the ways to do that is to perhaps take these narcotics and things like that, which alter your state and put you in a euphoric place, for example, for
Mm,
however short a time, like you've mentioned. Um, but that in itself is perhaps like a cry for help. So, you know, and we know that the ultimate destruction or self-destruction is suicide, right? Um, and if we look in the
Mm.
public eye, for example, there have been many people um, who've who've abused these particular coping mechanisms and then ultimately ended their lives, I guess, as this thing, because they were just so fed up with their normal state, their normal, I mean, their pain that they were experiencing, that they just couldn't handle it anymore, and then they just kind of ended it all. So I mean,
mm,
it's just an altering, a mind altering state, just to forever little, however small a time, just to give yourself some relief. I guess, which is why it's so, well, people who um, are in a bad way so easily take on these drugs.
You could argue the same thing about cigarettes to a lesser extent. People smoke to get that
Mm-hmm.
moment of
mm.
relief. It's a crutch,
Yeah,
it's a coping
sure.
mechanism just to get you a little bit of a
I mean,
breather,
I'll
and then you
give you an
go back
example.
into it.
For in it is common in our societies that I mean, people might recognize this pattern that dads come home, they'll be reclusive, they'll have their alcohol, numb themselves, and then kind of go to sleep, work, and rinse and repeat sort of thing, right?
Mm, mm.
I think we've
Yeah.
all seen that, and perhaps people out there will identify with that pattern as well. That is also a coping mechanism. Coming home, numbing yourself with alcohol, and then having that start all over again, once again.
Yeah.
And
I mean, you're functioning for the necessity of functioning. You're not
that's
actually
correct.
living a life.
And I guess we see we see the patterns now, because they're as it's retrospective now, but perhaps back then we didn't see
Yeah.
them. We couldn't identify them. I guess in my own life, I think that had I recognized some of those patterns, I would have given myself the advice to kind of speak up about it and address it openly in the past.
Well, I mean, I think you might be a little bit
Yeah,
harsh on yourself there because I think recognizing a pattern is one thing, knowing what to do with that
yeah.
pattern is another thing altogether. And I think you can see it in children. They're very intuitive and they're a lot smarter than we ever give them credit for, and they can identify patterns. They just don't know what to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was always just a part of me that kind of
You know it's not
yes,
right. You
exactly
just don't know
right.
what to do
But
about it.
had I spoken up about
Yeah.
it, maybe things would have been different. But anyway,
Yeah, but you hadn't
that's
developed to
true.
that
I
point.
know
It's like
chicken
saying,
chicken and an
it's
egg.
like taking a go kart, a child that's really good at go karting, and then throwing them in a Formula One car and expecting
They,
them to win a
they
Grand Prix. It
can.
doesn't really work that way.
I've seen the through the visor. It looks the same to me. Yeah,
Just a
it's
big
just a
blur,
big
bitch.
blur. No, but Yash Dean's 100% on the money. I think if you knew how to deal with it back then, it would have been completely different. But I still think that even if you know how to deal with these things, it still catches you off guard, right?
Mm.
Um, but yeah, yeah,
It's still
knowing what you
difficult, yeah.
know now, it makes it easier for you to deal with it, but you still have to deal with it, right? Because even at anybody's level of, if something impacts you to that level, right, it's something you still have to go through. You can't skip the stages, because if you skip the stages, you're not, yeah,
You're not
there's,
fully
yeah, you're not
processing. Yeah.
fully, you're like, I, I feel like you could skip some of the stages because you may not be like that in tune to, like, say for example, being angry,
Mm.
right? But something inside you is going to have that experience because of, and it manifests in different ways. But if you don't experience that, it's not complete, right? And there's a reason why there's this, so 7 stages are used as like a template.
At any point, have you ever experienced when the pain or the loss was really unbearable, and did they kind of and
Oh God,
Yeah.
did they
Jesus.
manifest themselves in other areas or physically or whatever? Have you ever experienced that?
Yeah.
We define physically. Like I
No,
cried. That's what you're
okay,
asking, and I
so
was like,
I'll
I
give you an
went into a
example for
silent
myself.
cry
I'll
where
give you
it's
an
like,
example
couldn't
of
even make
myself.
air
So I
noise.
felt so much of pain that I made myself feel pain in my heart. Like it manifested in my heart physically.
Oh no, that I know
Yes,
exactly what you're talking about. Like
this
you feel
this
this
proper
sharp
heartache.
feeling in your
Yes, yes,
heart.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
but I think that's a connection between the brain and
Yeah,
the heart there. I think that's like your emotions
yeah,
are so strong that it manifests in a
right.
physical sharp pang in the heart. Yeah, I get that. Like also when I talked about that initial shock where you feel like all the air's
Mm.
been knocked out of your lungs, that's a
Mm,
physical
mm.
reaction as well.
For sure. I definitely agree. I think it can easily manifest into those things. And it's not only that. It even just that impact, right, has pushes so many chemicals through your body that there's other effects. Metabolism changes, your
Mm.
sleep patterns
Mm-hmm.
change. Even though your mind is numb, you still can't sleep. Your energy
Yeah,
levels
that's
hit the
true.
floor. You can't cope with the day-to-day things that you're doing. I mean, those things are literally like byproducts of pain and loss.
I mean, I've, recently, well, not recently, maybe like last year or so, received the news that a close
Mm.
friend had passed on, and I couldn't move. I kind of just stood there for a bit. I don't know whether it was the brain going, you know what, moving is a bad idea for you, just like sit here quietly, or I was just my mind was moving at such a pace trying to process things that it couldn't issue an instruction to walk. I just stood there. It was just I can't make
Yeah,
movement.
I mean, you bring up an important.
That's a physical
Yeah, that is
manifestation, right?
that is. You're completely stuck in the mud, sort of thing. You bring up some good points there, Kuch, that physiological changes happen as well. Like you could start binge eating. You could because it
yeah.
manifests in other areas. Like depression and things like that causes you.
Mm.
Your
Yeah, straight
coping
up, right?
mechanisms.
So in that unbearable point, how did how did you how did you then bring yourself back from an unbearable point? Because if we've all been there, um, like how did we bring ourselves back? Because like sometimes traumas and pain that people experience, when we say it's unbearable, like they push it to the extreme and the
Mm,
ultimate self-destruction, as we mentioned earlier, which is suicide.
mm.
But when it gets to that tipping point, how do you bring yourself back?
I found for me that talking about it with somebody is probably the best way. Um, for me personally, like some people can deal with it internally, um, and I can too to some level, but I find that talking about it uh, allows me to come to grips with it because I'm saying it out loud. It's not internal anymore. I'm speaking about it, so it's coming out of me, right? Which means I'm trying to experience everything that's happening or that happened. And there's been cases where I've tried to internalize it for like a week, right? And it just gets worse. Like you slow down even further. It's like quicksand or
It's
like stuck in
debilitating.
mud. Yeah, you like slow down even more, and the more you try, the worse it gets. But as soon as you talk about it, there's like this. For me, there's this instant release because I'm I'm experiencing it through myself.
Dean, unbearable to perhaps something a bit better?
I I think talking about it is a very helpful thing for a lot of people, right? For me personally, talking about it doesn't actually help me at all. I just feel like I can't explain myself very well. And then the problem is that people try to
Yeah.
comfort you, right? And then they try to fill in the gaps that you're leaving, and it just becomes very frustrating. So I end up not talking about it. But the thing that always tends to bring me back is practice of life, right? You get into life and you have to. There's things that you have to do. There's people that depend on you. You have to go to work. You gotta do stuff, and that is the hardest demonstration that life will continue whether you want it or not. And the idea of that practical going through life there means that you actually need to continue, and the more you continue, the more you find that there are things worth living for, there are things worth enjoying, there are things worth feeling for again. And although you've been through something massively traumatic, and you're potentially still grieving at that point, it ushers you along the stages of grief a little bit easier when you actually start experiencing
I
life
mean,
again.
you just reminded me of. By the way, both of you have like contrasting, methods of kind of moving yourself from one state to the other. Like Kuj is communicative fully, and
Mm.
Dean is like, "World, leave me alone because you don't really understand me." And Joe,
Well, it's not that they don't understand me. It's more that
yeah,
I can't articulate how I feel.
but
Like
also, but also,
I
you're
don't know
not
how to
you're not
put
really.
what I'm going through
I
into
mean, you're not
words.
engaging as well, right? Perhaps you're
Well,
processing
I
it
think
internally as well.
it's yeah, but it's for me. It's like whenever I do try to engage, there's just a massive amount of frustration because this poor person, you can see that they want to help me and they're doing the best they can, and I'm just the potato that can't put into words
Sure.
what I feel.
So remember
So
that even when I say I
it's like,
speak about it, right,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that that person needs to understand what I'm saying.
Oh
I
yeah.
could be talking in a different language, right? The whole point is to
yeah,
talk about it, right? I found that I agree with Dean. Sometimes when you're telling somebody something about the pain that you're having, remember they can't experience it the way you're experiencing it,
Or
right?
they might
And
have
only you
never
can. Yeah, they may
had that.
even
Yeah.
feel worse because they may be more empathetic than you, right?
Right.
Or they may feel it less because they're like, this
true.
guy's just complaining about something, you know. Um, but
Yeah, he got dumped.
yeah, I
So
mean, like,
what?
move
Well, he was
on,
dumped.
be a
Move
man,
it,
right?
man.
How many times have you had that one?
Yeah.
Oh,
But
many, many.
um, but like the the
Different
the reason
podcast.
why I say I find because I've tried to internalize stuff, and as much as I can deal with it, I find that just speaking it is the important thing. So I think
Right.
Dean, you deal with it internally quite well because you've got this thing of you can speak to yourself quite well. For me, I must speak it out because it must come out of
Well,
me.
I don't know if I'm actually internalizing it then, because I mean, there's not necessarily an inner monologue going on. It's more just like there's definitely some bottling that occurs
Yeah.
at some point, right? There's
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
denial
Yeah.
about that. The question is, how am I letting it out of the bottle? Is because it's not done verbally, right? But the coping happens
You
when
carry on in your day to day.
it's almost as if the life itself shows me what to do, and it's like, okay, you just need to pay attention a little bit more, kiddo, because you're feeling very sorry for yourself right now, and that's fine. But everything else is continuing at normal
Mm.
speed, and you need to pay attention to that. And that practical application of life then starts to unbottle
Mm.
everything for
But
me.
are you dealing with it, or are you just becoming comfortable enough with it so that you can carry on doing what you're doing?
What's the difference?
Uh, so for me, dealing with it is something that the next time I feel these emotions, I'm comfortable with them. I don't get in.
Can you? Oh, I don't know if you can. I don't. Okay, I'll come out right now and say that I will never be comfortable with losing a person, like as in they passed on. I'll never be comfortable.
Yeah.
So I can never
Okay.
get to that
So
point.
I find I have to be that way because I'm not saying that I'm happy that they're gone or whatever it is. I'm saying that,
No,
yeah,
no, no. It's
yeah,
not a
I
question of
must be
happiness.
comfortable
Yeah.
with the fact that they lived their life up until that point, and everything that I had with them was great. But it's one of those things as part of life. I mean, you're going, people are afraid to say it, but you're going to lose everyone that you know and love, right, at some point,
Yeah.
or you're going to be the person that leaves, right? So I become
So
comfortable with that.
what I can say is, yeah, what I can say is that in terms of the practical application of life being the
Yeah.
teacher here, it's taught me that it's a very natural process. You don't like it and you don't need to like it. It's not your grand design, but you are a part of this grand design, and it's going to happen whether you like it or not. And there is a pattern to life, and that pattern ends with the person passing. So I can understand all
Yeah.
of these things, but the pain you feel in the moment doesn't change.
Oh,
It doesn't become
yeah.
more bearable either. I don't think I'll ever get to a point where I can say that that is bearable. I'll still go through my. I don't think the process is going to change for me.
And I think
No, yeah,
discussing that whole thing, I remembered the movie Sleepless in Seattle,
yeah.
and
Oh
there's a
yeah,
line there where, so just to give you a quick premise of the movie, Tom, yeah,
Meg
yeah,
Ryan and
Meg
Tom
Ryan, Tom
Hanks, right?
Hanks. So Tom Hanks plays a widower in the movie,
That's a good
and his
movie.
son calls into a radio station because he thinks his dad is lonely, because his wife has passed on, and the radio station host asks him, how have you done it? And he basically says, well, I'm gonna get out of bed every morning, breathe in and out all day long. Then after a while, I won't have to remind myself to get out of bed every morning and breathe in and out, and then after a while, I won't have to think about how I had it great and perfect for a while. So it kind of just speaks to like the autonomy
Jeez,
of yeah,
baby
yeah,
steps.
of what Dean was mentioning, right? Of how to just keep going, um, when you are faced with certain tough times. Like at first it'll be excruciatingly hard, and then as days go by, it gets kind of easier and easier.
That's also one of the things that they say. Grief is healed with time, right?
Yeah.
It's not healed with like um, you just saying, okay, it's gone now. You have to deal with it over time.
Hmm. And I think
Yeah.
with regards to communication, there certainly is like a stigma around truly what pains people these days, and being able to communicate that pain. What can we do to just help each other along the way, or be able to understand each other better? Because I don't think like we communicate as effectively.
I think a lot of us, especially if you come from a brown family, you get taught that communicating pain, suffering, weakness puts you at risk because someone can use that against you. Um, and you always, it comes from a place of scarcity and protection at all times. I think what you got to do is you have to find people in your life that you trust, yourself with, and you trust them around you, and you need people in your life that you could be completely vulnerable and they won't hurt you. That is a very hard thing to do. It takes sometimes a lifetime to find, and I'm very fortunate that I have a good few people like that in my life that I can be completely vulnerable and they're not going to essentially end me on an emotional level. So that's the support. And at that point, talking about stuff becomes so much easier because you feel safe with these people.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah.
Even if you don't have those people, asking for help is something that sh
I mean,
We need to
it's not
yeah,
used in
normalize.
our. It's, I mean, it's not. We're not used to it in our society, right? To ask help
yeah,
at
it's
all.
not a common thing. It's quite sad because like I've always, I don't know, ever since I was like even in school, I was never afraid to ask a question or ask for help. And that I think was instilled in me like early in the days because one of our teachers was just like, if you don't know the answer, you don't know the answer. You just
Mm.
ask for help. Somebody, if they make fun of you, then you know what they're more stupid for doing that. Because if you can help somebody that's actually asking in earnest for help, then you should, right?
Yeah.
If you obviously if you can and like it's not like gonna impact you like in a negative way. Um, but yeah, I think asking for help is not something that people should be afraid of doing.
Is there
And
anything? Is there anything that we can do to, like, for example, to I wouldn't say coax something out of someone, or just make that experience of communication a bit easier on them or for them.
yeah, so the best way that I would say that you can try to do that, but with people it's different. Like with Dean, for example, you you can say, Dean, listen, you're gonna tell me what the problem is. You're gonna tell me right now, and then we're gonna solve it. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah,
You
no,
have
no,
to
no.
tell them, listen, I'm here. I can listen to you if you have something to say. When you're ready, just call me, right? And then you get a response in time, or you'll find that they deal with it on their own. That's the best way you can. You can't force anybody to deal with something they're not ready to deal with. The best thing you can
100%.
do is say, listen, I'm here, I'm ready. If you want to talk about it, we can. If you don't want to talk about it, it's fine. We can talk about something else. I can listen to you. I can go away when you're ready, and we can come back and we can discuss it at another time. And that for me,
Yeah.
I found is the best way to help people because if you try to force it out of them, you can get a negative reaction, but also you can have them deal with something that they're not ready to deal with, which is worse.
Yeah, and it could be very traumatic and jarring
Mm,
for the person.
mm,
I think if I look at myself and how long it's taken me to open up, what helped me open up to people is the fact that those people have been there consistently in my life and have proven time and time again that they have my back, that they care, that they have my best interests at heart, that they just want me
Yeah.
to be okay. And even though like it could like I was good, he's known me since campus, and we've had like really interesting conversations. But it's taken years to get to a point where I opened up to him about like really hectic stuff, stuff that's like causing me depression or pain, suffering, loss, all those kinds of things. That only came like after a lot of experience um, in different situations with him as a friend and him just being unerringly
Yeah.
consistent. Like the man is more consistent than
what?
taxes.
What?
What?
He's just there
What?
always.
More
Kuj is just
consistent
there
than
always.
taxes. Wow.
What do you mean I'm
I
there
know, right?
always?
That's
I'm
quite a
not a
compliment,
I'm
Kuj.
not a creepy
But
looking guy. There always.
I
There.
didn't mean it that way. But I mean, like like that's the thing. Like to see someone always just be there, no matter what, come
Just
rain
that
or
rock in your life, right?
sunshine. Yeah, man, the
Yeah.
oaks are movable.
You're just calling me fat.
That gives you confidence. That gives you confidence to open up because then like, because of past behavior, this person's not going to hurt me or cause me harm. Past behavior tells me that this person actually just wants me to do well in life.
Just based on that as well, like how we can be more opening and or sorry, welcoming rather, and receptive to these things. Yeah, conducive, whatever.
Conducive. Yeah.
Are there like telltale signs that we can see that someone is in pain or struggling or they to deal with loss?
Yeah, I have
Oh
a.
yeah, dude. It's if you
Well,
look
you
hard
don't even
enough,
have
it's
to look
always
hard
there.
enough. Just watch the last Oscars movie.
Just what's the last? Sorry.
Wow.
Oscars.
Oh, right, sure.
It's
Let's not
it's
bring that up.
it's look. Sometimes it takes knowing the person
Yeah.
well enough to see, like this guy is reacting in a way that he's not normally reacting. Sometimes someone will get angry over something completely stupid, and you'll be like, "Are you sure you're actually angry about that, or what's going on? Something's not right." Or if someone like Will Smith goes up and slaps Chris Rock. I mean, it has nothing to do with Chris Rock's joke at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's something to do with inside of it. I mean, I'm pretty sure you've seen all over social media now that multiple people are saying the same thing. But I call it the year of the slappening. But
Yes, yes.
I think it's more of
Yeah.
something where so, you can see that the person is out of normal character, right? The sad thing is sometimes the person that you know's normal character is already going through something.
Yeah.
And that's where it's difficult to tell. But I mean, if you know the person's normal character, then you can see. But also sometimes where things are illogical, you're like, why is this person acting like this? It's because of some reason that's impacting them.
Right.
People are not necessarily always going to be like abrasive and stuff. They're abrasive because they've been hurt in some way.
Mm. And
Yeah.
and
There's that saying, the broadest smiles hide the deepest
Mm.
pains.
that's true. Identify with that one.
If you yeah, if you pay attention enough to people, you can see that their kindness comes from a place that says, "I don't want anyone else to
Yeah.
feel what I felt," and that just means you have to spend a bit more time investing in that person and getting to know them, and then they'll open up. It doesn't mean that they don't need help just because they're smiling and they're functional. It just means that they've found a way to carry on.
That's so true.
They
Yeah.
still need help. They still need support. They also need kindness. I mean, those people need kindness the most.
That's also true. Now, so I asked that question because you can recognize it. Then what do you do about it?
Yeah.
This is a case by case thing because, as Guj mentioned, like different people, they go through those stages differently. Like, I'm a very gung ho cowboy kind of person. I want people to be okay all the time, very very quickly, and that's not how
Mm.
people are. You can't like drag someone into being okay. They need to pick up themselves up and they need to heal in their own time, and you have to be not only accommodating but respectful of someone else's pace. What you can do is, like I mentioned, what people have done for me is
Mm.
be consistent and let them come to you because sometimes that's what people actually need is they just need confidence that they can approach someone, and that consistency gives you confidence to approach someone. So that's what I try to do now. Is having learned from what other people have done for me is that I just be there as consistently
Yeah.
as possible, and let them come to you when they're ready. Other times, people will come to you, then you got to put your problem solving hat on and figure stuff out.
If yeah, no, definitely. I guess using my experiences and all of you, plus others that aren't on this podcast, that is exactly what happened when I was in that particular state and you guys were there. I think my process was just a lot of reflection, but non-communicative reflection. Excuse me, but all of you were present. Just fully present. So you went. I would say, like the poking and prodding. It was just your presence, and your presence there gave me comfort, and then gave me the ability and the confidence to know that okay, if I did need anything to fall, excuse me, if I did need anyone to fall back on and talk to, then you guys would be there. So that for me. Like I was the non-communicative type, where presence was just required for me.
Presence is a
Yeah,
very comforting thing.
I can attest to that.
What about those people that don't want to deal with their problem?
That don't want to.
That's
Because
difficult. Hey, they don't want to. They don't want to
yeah,
face it. They
they
don't want
don't
to
want to
address it.
address
They
it.
just want to
They'd
bottle it
rather
up
carry on
and go
drinking
forward.
and taking drugs than
Keep going down the
yeah,
destructive path. I mean, that
yeah,
destructive path has only one end.
yeah. But I mean, like,
And
what do
Yeah,
you
but you
do?
can't. You can't
no,
take them off
you
that
you
path
can't, right?
unless
I
they
mean,
want to
look
come
at
off
it.
that path.
A
That's
lot
the
of people
thing.
have forced people into rehab, and those same people have gone
Mm,
back, into the
mm,
same old patterns.
They rubber banded
Yeah,
is what
no,
they did.
it's we always say it's a mind thing. Like sadness is a choice, happiness is a choice. All of those things are
God, I don't know. I don't know about sadness being a choice. Eh? Don't think I'm mature
no.
enough to admit that.
Think about it. Okay, what I'd like you to do is go watch a video of Anthony Robbins in one of his seminars, and he tells someone this person was perpetually making themselves, I would say, depressed and sad. He asked them to close their eyes and think about being sad for a moment. And they made themselves sad. Like you can see everything change about them, their physiology, their breathing, all of that,
No,
right?
I have no doubt that
Yeah.
you can make yourself sad, right? But I think the idea that
Oh, it's a
sadness is
choice. Yeah.
sadness is certainly sometimes a choice, right? Sometimes people like to wallow in self pity.
Right.
That's
Right.
100%. I got you there. Agreed. But other times, the sadness will come and find you, and you don't want it, but it's there. Like it will find you,
Wherever
like a
you are,
bloodhound,
I will find you.
and
Yeah.
you got to deal. So I don't think in situations like
Well,
that it's a choice.
the sudden onset ones, like you're alluding to, are not a choice, right? They'll pounce on you, like you're saying. But staying there
Mm.
and as Prash is, as everyone is saying, is like not dealing with it. That's a choice.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
here's the question, right? Like, at what point are you choosing it, and at what point are you still processing it? Because you can't just be like, "Oh, I'm really sad right now," and then all of a sudden flick a switch and go, "I will no longer be sad." Sometimes you have to
So
let yourself feel.
I understand that. I mean, like conceal, don't like you can't be Elsa, conceal and don't feel, right?
Yeah,
No,
otherwise you
but
end up
you
freezing
got to
everybody.
realize that some of your patterns are destructive as well. Like you can't just say my pattern for pain, loss, and grief is I'm going to do cocaine for the next 6 months until I'm okay again.
Yeah, so
That would be
That's not
very
particularly
expensive,
healthy,
but yes.
yeah, so
and it's not like
for
No, I got
you
you.
need to find a process
But
that's
the point I'm trying
yeah.
to make is how do you like the statement of it's a choice is it's very applicable
Yeah.
in many aspects, but for me it's sometimes you have to allow those emotions, you have to give those emotions the respect that they deserve and the
Yeah.
time that they need because it is part of the stages of
I mean,
grieving.
there's no.
yeah,
We've said in the past as
I
well.
don't think you should
We've
stay
said
there
in the past as
forever.
well. There's no set time period. There's no set rule book for you to do X, Y, and Z. We always say always
Yeah.
feel your emotions to its fullest. 100%. I agree with that. I've always said that. It's
Hmm.
not like okay, I'm feeling sad now, and 1 second later I need to change. Like I need to change. No, I'll feel it, yes, but I won't stay there. That sort of thing, right? But to Guja's
Yeah.
question as to
yeah.
this whole
So
thing,
so for me, there is a stage
yeah,
where you can see that someone is either not coping with the issue or they are purposefully avoiding it,
right,
right?
yeah, yeah,
And it's not a defining line like today they were, tomorrow they aren't, but you get to a stage where you can see the person has now put in coping mechanisms to actually deal with the problem instead of dealing with the problem, right?
yeah,
So, like you say, taking drugs, going down, like if they go and drink once or twice, right, they get completely sloshed and they come home, you're like, okay, I understand. But if like, say for example, our husband lost his wife, right? He gets completely sloshed for one weekend. Okay, right? He gets completely sloshed the next weekend. Okay, but he's got kids, right? Now, by the third weekend, you're like, buddy, what's going on? Because I understand that you've lost your wife, and I understand that you need to grieve. But are you just getting sloshed and not dealing with the issue, or is there another? Like, you can't do this for 3 months on it. It's not going to happen, right? It's not going to work. So
Yeah.
you don't tell them, listen, what you're doing is wrong. For me personally, the way I would deal with it is there's only so much that you can do to get somebody to see the light, right?
yes,
You say, listen, this is what I think is going on, right? If you want to talk about it and if you want to deal with it, we're here, right? With your friends or whatever it is, a family member, we're here, we can talk about it. You don't have to keep doing what you're doing because at some point you make them understand what the ramifications of what they're doing are, and then you have to leave it. It's that person's own
choice.
choice, right? And it does impact the. You can explain to them how it's impacting the people around them, but obviously there's no guiding line. It's not like the guy got sloshed 3 weekends in a row. You can tell them anything. It's more about how is it impacting the rest of your life, right? And what is it doing, right? Um, to you. And when you see that it's negatively impacting everything around you, like um, he's not feeding his kids, or he turns into an abusive person, or then you can see that it's having a negative impact, which means for me it's when what has happened to the person changes that person so that he starts negatively impacting the people around him,
Right.
right, on a continuous basis, right. Then I feel that they're not dealing with the issue but rather outwardly projecting the problem that they have, not internally dealing with it, and that's
Isn't
when I
it?
feel
I
it's
mean, isn't it
it's a
also
problem.
like we always say, it's a cry for help as well.
It is a cry for help, but the
These,
thing is that if you're crying for help, but you're not dealing with it, and the person comes to you and says, "Listen, I can see your cry for help, and I'm willing to listen and stuff,"
yeah,
and they're still not dealing with it, then there's only so much you can do. I mean, you can't make somebody see the light. You can force them into
rehab and
um,
whatever.
rehab and whatever it is. And some people come out, they're like, you know what, it was right that you sent me there. Some people don't, and from what I hear, the majority of people don't. So um, it's a thing of listen. There's only so much you can do because remember that you're your own life and you're your own person, and you can help as much as you can. But if people don't listen and people want to be
It's
the way they
ultimately
are,
their own decision. I mean,
yeah,
I'd like to use a famous person as well, Chris Farley, for example, a famous
yeah,
comedian back in the day, and some of his
crumple.
best friends were, what is this, Adam Sandler, and what is the other guy? Can't remember, the short guy.
Rob Schneider.
Not, yeah, it's some of them as well, right? And in the documentary, one of the documentaries is like Adam Sandler went up to him sincerely and said, "Guy, you're going to kill yourself with all these drugs and things." Exactly like you're saying. Um, you know, uh,
Yeah,
what are you doing with your life? You're going to kill yourself. You know,
yeah.
and few weeks later, that's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Jeez.
So I completely get that point, right? You know, as an outside person, there's only so much you can do, and it's
Mm.
it's all internal as well. Like if a person doesn't want to change, they won't change.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen. Are there
You
other ways to get help? So I know of online anonymized groups, for example, like that I've used in the past.
sorry, what groups?
Online
Yeah,
anonymized groups.
anonymized. Okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
there's
that
like
that
this.
can be quite helpful actually.
Yeah. There's like chat
Um,
relay, for example, for
uh,
for uh, to do self help.
yeah. Some people find help on Reddit. Some people can see a psychologist, see a friend, see a family member. Ask an elderly person because elderly people have generally dealt with quite a lot. Sometimes ask a kid because they'll just have the most honest opinion. But asking for help is probably
Step one.
anyone that is willing to just take even 5 minutes to listen is can help you. It doesn't mean yeah,
Yep,
yeah, it doesn't
that's
mean that
true.
they have to have the answers because not it's so hard for somebody to have answers to your problem, right? Because they feel it so differently. But in them, if you really want someone to give you answers, then I would say professional is probably the best way because they've studied that, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And they have practical
Yeah.
experience with a wide variety of people.
Mm.
A wide variety. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they would have seen how different people deal with things. So they're a
Yeah.
practiced hand, as good to
I
say.
mean, as well, if people are afraid of one to ones, you know, like I mentioned, the online anonymized groups is another option for you. You know, just in case you're feeling some sort of stigma, you know, walking up to a therapist or counselors or whomever's um, building or block or whatever,
Mm.
just so you don't feel, you know, ashamed or that stigma. So you can get help out there as well.
Mm.
Um, is there anything else about pain and loss that you think that we haven't covered just yet, from your perspective?
I don't really think of anything at this stage.
I mean,
Yeah, I think
yeah, at this point, you perhaps haven't experienced some of those other ones as well. So, you know, we can't really talk to those just yet.
sure. But it also comes down to too much of one thing is not always a good thing.
Mm. Yes, agreed.
Um, and even when you're trying to deal with pain and loss, there must be balance.
True.
I think that's important, but it's hard to keep in mind all the time.
find people that you know have your back, because when your mind goes, they'll anchor you.
Yeah.
I'm definitely in agreement with Dean. If there was times in my life where I didn't have those people in my life, my
Ooh,
path would
curtains,
be
boss.
different.
Finished.
I,
GG.
I would say so as well. I definitely would say so.
No way back. Like, I've been very lucky with people that like. Nirov has been basically keeping me alive. He's a buddy of mine. He's a doctor, but he's been keeping me alive since like grade 6. I think he's tired. He's become basically built a profession out of it. Another one, like unerring consistency of
Right.
just being there whenever I've needed
I
someone,
mean,
and
we're
just
we're
yeah,
we're kind of
pulling me
social
out the
beings as
fire.
well. A lot of the stuff that we
Yeah.
ever go through and grow through um, is done in community and with community. So it stands to reason
Yeah.
that if ever we experience a pain or loss, community will help us get through.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, thanks both of you for your valued input. It was good. It was a difficult one. It's
It's
not
not
easy to
easy.
talk about
We don't shy away from the
these. Yeah,
uncomfortable
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Using our lives as examples as well. Thank you so much for being a part of this podcast, and thank you, listeners, for once again tuning in. This is your three wise
Hope
potatoes
it
signing
helps.
out again.
Bye.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.